What's good, man, and welcome to yet another episode or the latest edition of the Must Be Two Sides podcast. I'm your host, Lorenza, and honestly, I like to reply to an email that I got before I start. The must be two sides does not mean there must be two sides to an issue. Simply is an ode to the rapper Shawty Lo, who was, I guess, dissing T.I. in a way in a song called Dun Dun. And if you don't know anything about that, then so be it. Google it, YouTube it. Maybe then you'll understand, all due respect. But, 2017 is coming to a close, and I'd like to, I guess, do my top tens or list that everyone else is doing. The other day I watched the CNN list. The list started, well, the list was entitled Top Stories from Social Media. And after CNN displayed this list, the first thing I thought to myself was, has CNN organically given us any news? Because it definitely seemed like every big story that was on CNN this year was born out of social media. Like all of it, whether it was the Charlottesville protest or anything of the sort. Basically, it all came from social media, and that leads me to the thought that a guy named Boxing Eagle was right. New media is definitely something that is going to take a big step forward in 2018. The way that people used to get their news is changing. People are getting their news from YouTube, getting their news from podcasts, getting their news from friends on Facebook, from people on Twitter, so on and so forth. You're not just limited to getting the news from CNN or Fox News or your local TV broadcast, which those are important for weather and the like. But, all in all, it is us who connect as people. That is a better, more organic way to get your news. And with that, I'd like to start off with my top 10 moments this year, or I'd say my favorite 10 moments this year in combat sports. That would be boxing and the UFC specifically, not just necessarily MMA, but boxing and UFC specifically, or combat sports. I have about 5 MMA fights. I have 5 boxing matches, and then I have fighters of the year in both sports. And I'd like to start off by saying that in July 2017, we saw Jones and Cormier Part 2. Now, we've all that love fights, period. We've all been wanting to see Part 2 for quite some time. They had all kinds of things happening between this fight and the first fight. It's been about 2 years, basically, and John Bones Jones has faced suspension for cocaine, for PEDs, and anything of the sort. And, we just couldn't wait for him to get back into the ring to see if Cormier could actually beat him. Cormier is probably the second best light heavyweight of all time, and it's only because John Bones Jones is the best light heavyweight of all time. But in July 2017, Cormier, or Cormier Jones 2, I should say, happened. And wow, it was an amazing fight. The first round started off with Cormier doing a lot of the things that Cormier does. It was a lot of strikes. John Bones Jones threw a lot of strikes as well. You could see that it was at one point, if I'm not mistaken, there was a punch, an uppercut thrown in the fight, if I can remember correctly, that Cormier threw that basically knocked John Jones's mouthpiece out. So he was definitely giving John Bones that work, and John Bones was definitely giving him that work. And I do believe it wasn't until, I'd say, round 2 or round 3 that the shot heard around the world actually landed for John Bones Jones, and that was a kick to the head. Wow, I remember watching it as if it was yesterday. John Bones Jones kicked this man in the head, and no one expected it. You know, people expected John Jones to try to end this by taking it to the ground and throwing elbows or something like that. People weren't expecting a head kick, or people were expecting a knee. It was just the fact that the head kick seemed to come out of nowhere. That it just, wow. It just showed you, the levels there can be between top-notch opponents, and we'll get into that in another fight. But John Bones Jones won by stoppage, and I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, all of the fights that I've chosen have ended with some form of stoppage. But that would be how we're going to start off the list right now, and we're going to transition into April 2017, and the first boxing thing that came to my mind of my top favorite things, matches of combat sports, was Joshua versus Klitschko, or Klitschko versus Joshua. Now, this fight was all kinds of amazing. It had all the drama that you should see, all the drama that you want. They had the long entrances. It had the storyline that everyone loves when it comes to fight sports. You have this young up and coming guy, and you have this old guy, and it's either going to be a passing of the torch or the extension of an era. And bottom line, man, around round 6, Klitschko went down. And I do believe that in round 6, it was around round 6, I should say. Not that I specifically know because I don't have the fights in front of me. But round 6, Klitschko went down, got up, came back. Round 7, Joshua went down because after he knocked Klitschko down, there was just an array of punches being thrown. He basically punched himself out of the fight, so to speak. And we thought that after Joshua went down in round 7, that the match was definitely over. But Anthony Joshua showed me something in that fight that I didn't know that he had in him, and he had that grit that you need to have when you're a boxer or someone who fights in MMA. It's something that you have to come back from. If you get knocked down, you have to get back up. And round 10, Joshua showed that, youth was definitely better than experience in this situation, because in round 10, you saw the uppercut from hell, and that uppercut from hell, oh my God, as magic and as gorgeous as it was definitely shattering for Klitschko. And he'd go down multiple times in, what was it, round 10 or round 11? But he'd go down multiple times in the fight, and it was just one of those things. You just saw that, Anthony Joshua was on a different level that night, and he actually won, and he was able to retain or gain a belt that he deserved to have. It was one of those things that I thought that, Klitschko should have fought Deontay Wilder years ago, but that's neither here nor there. But we'll give Joshua Klitschko a round of applause for what they gave us. Now, the third thing is another MMA fight, and as you can tell, we're going back and forth. We're going back and forth with this MMA boxing. And you have Joanna Jędrzejczyk, whatever her name is. You just call her Joanna Champ, against Rose Namajunas. That took place in November 2017. And going into this fight, I wasn't thinking anything about it. As far as being competitive, I thought that Joanna would go into this fight against Rose Namajunas and just dominate her as she has dominated all the rest of her opponents. There's this thing in fight sports, and you have this Eastern European comes in and just wrecks shop, whether it's the Kovalev or the Golovkin or Joanna. These guys just come in and they have this mentality to where it's either kill or be killed. And I definitely thought that this fight would be no different. And boy, was I wrong. Rose Namajunas walked into that octagon. They closed that cage and she beat the absolute shit out of Joanna. She really did. She beat her to the point where it was the first time that I noticed, probably not the first time that it's happened, but it's the first time that I noticed that someone actually tapped due to strikes. That belt exchanged hands, and Namajunas will be known for not only that fight, she'll be known for the post-fight press conference or the post-fight interview she had as soon as the fight was over, and she was just like saying, just damn it, just be a good person. Like, that speaks wonders of someone who, that's their message. That's the message that they want to convey after they just beat the shit out of someone. So shout out to her for that. That was definitely something that I appreciated, and I can't wait to see Namajunas fight again. Obviously, Joanna is pretending as if it didn't happen the way we saw it. But, I mean, they'll both get back in the octagon soon, and as soon as they do, I know I'll be right there for it. And I can't wait for it, man, no matter who they're fighting. There's a lot of good women, especially after the Tough series. There's a lot of good women coming up in the UFC as far as fighters are concerned. As a matter of fact, the last day, or December 30th, this Saturday actually, or tomorrow, Holly Holm and Chris Cyborg actually have a face-off. So, hey man, looking forward to women in MMA. Once again, this has been a big year for them, especially after the year that Ronda Rousey had a couple of years ago. So, looking forward to all the goodness that comes with it. Now, the next fight happened in June 2017, and it was a rematch. Obviously, it was Ward Kovalev 2, formerly Kovalev versus Ward. But this is one of those fights that I actually called. I had some friends over. We had some burgers and a lot of conversation before the fight started, and I told one of my good friends that, hey, Ward is going to stop Kovalev in this fight. Of course, loving boxing, loving all combat sports, that is a stretch to say that Andre Ward is going to go up in weight and end up fighting the number one contender, the most feared man, arguably, outside of Adonis Stevenson in a weight division. And he's going to move up from middleweight to super middleweight and actually beat this guy. That's crazy talk to a lot of people. In my mind, it was crazy talk too, but I believe in Andre Ward like that. If you call yourself SOG or son of God, or Nas calling himself Godson, you have to be a talented person to be able to do stuff like that, to be able to pull things like that off. And Andre Ward, this is bias talking right now, but Andre Ward will always be, in my mind, one of the greatest fighters of all time, because he is that genuine fighter, one of those genuine fighters who was as good in the ring as he was outside of the ring. Yes, he had a hard life like every other boxer had a hard life, or every other person in MMA had a hard life. That's how they end up fighting. Fighting for survival, fighting for food, fighting for relevance, fighting for hope, basically. He turned that into a great business strategy. He turned that into being a great family man, a great father, a great husband, and even a greater follower of Christ to a certain extent. And after this fight, he ended up retiring, which left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. But, it is best to see a fighter go out the way he went out rather than to see him go out too late, like we saw with a Holyfield, or like we'll see with a Roy Jones Jr. or anyone of that nature. It's okay to go out like Klitschko, because Klitschko did retire after the Joshua fight in April, but it's better to see them go out like we watched Andre go out, rather than see you get knocked out like Klitschko was stopped. Now, with that being said, it's more exciting to see Klitschko go out the way he went out versus a Ward, but it means more to a family. It means more to a fan if you go out the way Ward went out. Now, during the first fight, we heard a lot of this talk that, Kovalev was going to end Ward's career. He was a big bully and all that good stuff. And it might have been a controversial ending to that match as far as the scorecards are concerned, but Andre Ward was given a victory. Now, the reason why that's important is because Kovalev came into the second fight as if he was still a big bully. He came into the second fight as if Andre Ward was still afraid of him, or was even afraid of him at all. And that's the wrong way to go about a fight with a guy who just literally beat you, who just literally lasted this many rounds. I'll even go as far as to say a fighter and fights that didn't make my list. You have Gennady Golovkin. Gennady Golovkin was out here, he's an Eastern European, was bowling through all kinds of the competition. I mean, he was just going straight through everyone, putting people in body bags or whatnot. And to see him go up against Danny Jacobs, who I like a lot as a fighter and as a person as well, he's a former cancer survivor, or is a cancer survivor. To see him go up against Gennady Golovkin and have the kind of success against Gennady that we haven't seen before. Maybe he didn't deserve a win, but he definitely deserved a draw in that moment. But they say, you got to beat the champ. But to see him, and then just to see how Gennady Golovkin fought against Canelo Alvarez, like, that's one of those things that lets you know that, hey, if Canelo watches the Danny Jacobs fight, he knows that there are a lot of vulnerabilities in Gennady Golovkin's game. So you see that and you pick up on that and you become less fearful as a fighter of that guy. And that's exactly what happened in Ward Kovalev too. Andre Ward went in there. He wasn't knocked down in the second round like he was knocked down in the previous fight. He went in. He immediately started attacking the body. His jab and slip was working a lot better than it was in the first fight. And just all around game plan was much better. Virgil Hunter actually did a magnificent job of training Andre for the second fight. I mean, an extraordinary job. And yes, this one too had a controversial ending, but it was only controversial in the sense that, a lot of people, or a few people, thought that the punches that made Kovalev quit were fairly low. Now, I don't believe they were as low as people want to make them out to be. They were right on the belt line. The referee, Tony Weeks, before the match started, pointed and said, this is okay and this is okay. There was a lot of bending over at the waist for Kovalev in this fight, and to the point the man just quit and he sat down on the ropes. And then after he seen the fight was over, and I'll put it this way, there are things that you see in matches, especially when they're over and it's a controversial stoppage. You look at the reaction of the fighter who is being protected. If the guy feels like he can still go, you're going to see that immediately. We saw that with Anthony Joshua and the Takam fight. We saw that Takam was like, what the hell are you stopping it for, man? What's going on? Yeah, I'm tired, but I'm still on my feet. Kovalev's reaction was very telling. Like, he was done. He was done. He wanted no more of what was being given out to him at all. So, all due respect to Kovalev and his people, but yeah, he was absolutely crushed. The crusher was crushed. The crusher gave up. And shout out to him for getting in the ring enough, but hey, sometimes you got to come better than that. The next fight on the list is Francis Ngannou versus Alistair Overeem. It happened this month, actually, December 2017, which you had two heavyweights in the UFC vying for an opportunity to fight against the heavyweight champ, Stipe Miocic, or whatever his name is. And Alistair Overeem, for a lot of you that watch MMA, you remember him from Pride and all these Strikeforce, all these other entities. You remember him from kickboxing. And this guy is one of the ultimate strikers. Earlier this year, he beat Mark Hunt up. One of his most notable fights in the UFC is when he mule kicked Brock Lesnar. That right there was kind of a big deal, because Brock Lesnar was supposed to be this unstoppable force at the time. And straight up, bro, Ngannou went in there, and this might be the fight I talk about the least, but Ngannou went in there with Overeem acting wild and trying not to get caught. He got the half hook, half left uppercut from hell, to which the man was out before he even touched his back. And then to have that hammer fist go in his face at the end, and all this being the first round, I mean, damn. Like, the fight was so impressive that we're already saying that next year in January, when Ngannou faces Stipe, we're already saying the winner of that fight may go down to be the greatest heavyweight champ in UFC history. That's how impressive that was. That is how impressive that was, man. That does not happen very often. But Francis Ngannou, man, look up the guy. And he's another guy that will be known not only for the knockout, but the words he said during the post-fight interview, in which he got the mic and said, "Fuck racism," in his distinct voice. And he talked about the slavery that was going on in Libya and all that good stuff. And hey, man, shout out to Ngannou, Africa Stand Up. He's from Cameroon, moved to France, and now he lives in Las Vegas, and he works out at the Performance Center at the UFC, man. So it's nice to see him come up the way he did. I remember him losing a fight, and since that fight that he lost, he's just gotten better and better and better. And he's gonna be great before it's all said and done. So look forward to him and Stipe actually going in there, slugging it out. Now we're gonna stay in the month of December, and wow, the month of December it's as good as a month of November, but I'd say November, obviously looking at my list now, I'd say November is probably the best year of fighting this year. But December, you have Lomachenko versus Rigondeaux, however you want to say it. This was one of those super fights. First time that two-time gold medalists were going to fight in a ring professionally. Now, it's to be said that Rigondeaux, actually, the Cuban guy, actually went up 8 pounds or 2 weight classes to face Lomachenko, and he was definitely the smaller man at the weigh-ins and definitely the smaller man in the ring. And Lomachenko got in there doing some things that I thought he couldn't do to Rigondeaux, and he did them. Now, this is one of those fights that I was absolutely wrong about. Now, there's only 2 fights on this list that I was wrong about the outcome out of the 10, but I was absolutely wrong about this. I thought Rigondeaux was going to take Lomachenko in a deep water, and it was going to be this amazing struggle. But I think around round 6 or 7, Rigondeaux just quit. He just refused to fight anymore, man. And that's not the first time I've seen that happen. I remember watching Lomachenko for the very first time because I was into this fighter named Nicholas Walters. This guy with braids from Jamaica. I saw what he did to Nonito Donaire, and I was like, yo, this guy's going to be pretty good. Let me make sure I pay attention to this guy in the future. And I watched him fight to take the fight with Lomachenko, and I watched Lomachenko make him quit. So that's two fighters that I really like that Lomachenko has made quit. So I'm giving Lomachenko all the respect that he deserves. Now, would I like to see him fight Mikey Garcia next? Absolutely. I just want to, like, at this point, I'm going to treat Lomachenko the way that a lot of people treated Mayweather. I'm just going to throw all kind of fighters out there and say, hey, he should fight this guy because maybe this guy beat him. He can't beat this guy. So I'm going to do that with Lomachenko. But shout out to High Tech. That dude is definitely doing some monumental things in a boxing ring. So that would be that next thing on the list. Now we're going to go from December back to May 2017. And one of my favorite fighters, favorite new fighters, I would say, would be Errol Spence Jr. versus Kell Brook, or Brook versus Spence Jr., because Brook was definitely the name. He was the A side in this match. Well, Kell Brook, the last time he was in the ring, he actually was beaten by Gennady Golovkin. I think he broke his right eye socket, if I'm not mistaken, in that fight. It was the first fight that he lost of his career. He was a welterweight that moved up the middleweight just to secure the bag against Gennady Golovkin. And a lot of people understood that, and a lot of people said that might have been a mistake. Well, it turned out to be, quite the mistake, however you want to view it. Because, Kell Brook, he was showing good signs at first, but that relentlessness and that southpaw stance and the power that Errol Spence Jr. took all the way to the UK to beat this man with was all there. I was absolutely impressed with the fact that Errol Spence Jr. broke the other eye socket that Kell Brook had on his face, and it showed you that Errol Spence was here to stay, and that Kell Brook may need to move up to 154 to face that competition there, because he's clearly shown that against the top-notch opponents in the welterweight right now, outside of Sean Porter, he may not be able to withstand what these guys have to offer. So I'd say that would be next on the list. Now, the list after that, we're going to go with more MMA. Yeah, we got two MMAs in a row, and then a boxing. But Cody Garbrandt and TJ Dillashaw. Garbrandt, one of my favorite fighters in the UFC, just talks mess all the time, tattooed up like you would expect a person like him to be. TJ Dillashaw, one of those guys who wants to be a good guy, but has actually done some wrong in his life. He doesn't really want to fess up to it all the time. He's one of those types, but he made a great decision, or the right decision, for himself and his family when he chose to basically leave the team that he was on and go to a new team. People get real sensitive about teams in MMA. It's no different than any other sport or any other relationship, basically. But going into the fight, Cody Garbrandt was saying that he was about to whoop Dillashaw's ass. It was getting real personal. He was bringing up, personal things, and Dillashaw went in there and knocked Cody Garbrandt out. I didn't expect it. And that's on the list. As a matter of fact, as good as Dillashaw is, it's just something about him I didn't respect, because I like Cody Garbrandt that much more. As a matter of fact, if I go back and look at the Rose Namajunas versus Joanna champion scheme, I didn't expect Namajunas to do Joanna like that, and Dillashaw did Cody Garbrandt the same way. I expected this fight would go the distance. I didn't expect it to end the way it ended, but I definitely enjoyed watching it straight up, man. And now, I'll come back to Dillashaw in a minute. But there's another MMA fight that was definitely worth a watch, and that was GSP and Michael Bigsby. That also took place in November. Actually, November had 1, 2, 3, 4 fights on the list, which is okay, which officially makes that the best. Yeah, that was definitely, yeah, it was definitely the best year fighting. But GSP came back after what is a 3-4 year layoff. He went up in weight to face Michael Bigsby. I thought that was a smart move because I've never been too impressed with Michael Bigsby as a fighter. Now, Michael Bisping as a talker, Michael Bisping as a competitor, absolutely impressed with the guy. You know, it makes sense that he is where he is. It's not a fluke, but never really been impressed with him as a fighter. And someone who is as good as GSP is, you know, I kind of expect them to beat someone like Michael Bisping. But it was good to see, just good to see, like eras clash or whatnot. Like it's almost like the GSP era ended with the Matt Serras and the likes, but there was something about Michael Bisping that was cross generational, and to see that guy lose against someone like GSP or George St. Pierre or Jean-Claude Van Damme or the Canadian guy, it was beautiful, man. It was a beautiful thing to watch, and I wasn't really impressed with the fight per se, but I was happy to put that on the list because, you know, it's a top moment, man. That's a top moment for MMA to see one of the old guys come back and get it. Because usually when you see an old guy come back, it's something that you definitely didn't want to see at all. Now, the last fight on the list before I get into the MMA fighter of the year and the boxing fighter of the year, Wilder versus Stavern, November 2017. Deontay Wilder, heavyweight champ here in the United States of America. Bermane Stavern, former heavyweight champ. He's the guy that Wilder won his belt from. He's the only guy that, wow, he's the only guy that didn't get knocked out by Deontay Wilder. He went all 4 rounds, and with all 12 rounds, and Deontay said that part of the reason why that happened is because, you know, he actually hurt his hand, so he wasn't able to generate the kind of force that he wanted to in the beginning. A lot of people were mad at Bermane Stavern for this fight because he came in, he looked sloppy, he looked overweight. But no matter how overweight or sloppy he looked, man, he acted as if he was going to kill Deontay Wilder. And as a matter of fact, man, I can go to that fight right now and, much like the Kovalev-Ward fight, show you exactly a guy that isn't afraid or will not be bullied by a guy that he's already beat. As a matter of fact, the fight lasted for less time that I've talked about it right now. Period. Deontay Wilder looked like a Super Saiyan in that dang fight, bro. I mean, he really looked like a Super Saiyan. He bounced and hopped around as if he was going to throw some kind of leg kick, man. And to see someone juke someone and then throw a punch, or to see someone get knocked down and then look at the ref and say, hey, he hit me behind the head. Well, we can clearly see he hit you directly in front of the face. Like, that was just an amazing night. And it was one of those nights to let the world know that Deontay Wilder was here to stay as a fighter, and he was a legit fighter, and he would remain a legit contender here in the heavyweight division. Now, hopefully we get that, Wilder Joshua fight that we've all wanted, but I do believe Joshua Parker is going to happen first. But we're going to get that in 2018. It's going to be a great year for boxing and MMA in general in 2018 because there are so many things, so many things that we get to look forward to because of the year that we just had. So, shout out to this year. Now, for the two fighters of the year, it's already been past 30 minutes, so I'm going to make the fighter of the year comments kind of quick. As far as UFC goes, MMA, Demetrius Johnson. He is the fight of the year for two reasons. The belly to back suplex turned into armbar, or the mighty bar, or whatever we're going to call it, was the most amazing move I've ever seen in MMA history. And to do that against a number one contender in a title match, that's something that cannot be ignored. Also during that match, he extended his winning streak, and he is now the sole owner for most wins in the UFC. And that is, or title defense is one of those. That is an amazing storyline, and maybe we'll get to see him versus TJ Dillashaw, because they just make all kind of opponents to find all kinds of people out there that they try to put in the ring with Demetrius Johnson. They made an entire season of The Ultimate Fighter to try to find someone to compete with the man, and he beat the snot out of that guy. So Demetrius Johnson definitely earns Fight of the Year as far as MMA goes. And Fight of the Year for boxing, he wasn't on the list either as far as the fights are concerned, but it's definitely Terrence Crawford, the young man out of Nebraska. He has now moved up to welterweight, but before he did that, he won all 4 belts in his previous division in some fantastic fashion. And we don't see undisputed, unified champs very often, but to see what Terrence Crawford did this year in boxing, it was just a sight to behold. He was one of those fighters with a mean streak. He didn't mind beating you up. He didn't mind switching to southpaw. He didn't mind trading. He didn't mind jabbing. He didn't mind boxing. He didn't mind brawling. He just didn't mind a lot of the stuff that we look forward to in boxers. And, you know, for his accomplishment alone of getting all 4 belts and the people that he beat this year, for that alone, he would be my pick for boxing fighter of the year. So, there we have it, man. We have Jones Cormier, Joshua Klitschko, Joanna Champion versus Rose Namajunas, Ward versus Kovalev 2, and Ngannou versus Overeem, Loma Chenko versus Rigondeaux, Spence Jr. and Kell Brook. We got Garbrandt versus Dillashaw, GSP versus Bigsby, Wilder versus Deverne, and then we have Demetrius Johnson as Fight of the Year, Terrence Crawford as Fight of the Year for boxing. Here we have it, man. This has just been my not so quick opinion on the top 10 things that happened in combat sports this year. It's not necessarily the, I should say not the top 10 things, but my favorite 10 things that happened in combat sports this year, man. Thank you for listening to Must Be Two Sides podcast. I'm your host, Lorenza. Thank you for subscribing via Google Play or iTunes, or however you listen, whether you listen to iPadio way via Twitter, or you're listening through Stitcher Radio, the likes, man. We're so many places. We don't know how to count, man. And once again, man, thank you guys for helping me break 1,000 subscribers this year. And maybe once we turn this into a YouTube channel, the subscription will go up, the content will get even better, and the interaction with you guys, other than email, will actually evolve as well. But thank you guys for listening. Peace.